A very good morning once again. I'm glad you're still with us here on Morning at NTV. We are going into the Kickstarter segment, a look at how Parliament budget looks at around about this time in light of the latest revelations following what was described as the Parliament exhibition. Something that was innovative but has appeared to be a lot more effective in unearthing some of the grand theft, graft and misuse of public funds. I'll be introducing my guests very shortly who will be helping us understand at what point do certain things have to happen the way they do within the precincts of Parliament, and whether Parliament itself should continue by any way possible to allocate itself the kind of money that we've seen in the last few weeks. The exhibition on using the hashtag Uganda Parliament Exhibition has exposed the abuse of office and the gross mismanagement of public affairs within Parliament. It cites several allegations that have been made against the Speaker, her deputy, as well as some members of Parliament, and these include fraudulently lobbying for relatives to secure jobs in Parliament, distributing large sums of money in terms of per diem for fictitious trips, as well as engaging in corruption deals to unlawfully enrich themselves. Of course, the eye of the storm, or the latest to cause this furor, was the service award that was revealed to have been handed down to at least 5 people, including the now embattled immediate former leader of opposition, Mathias Mpuuga. With me this morning to help us understand some of the financial matters within the precincts of Parliament that we might not be privy to are Julius Mukunda. He is the Executive Director at CSBAG. Many thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Joining us too is Sarah Birete, Executive Director at the Center for Constitutional Governance. Many thanks for making it. And on her left is the indefatigable lawyer. I would love to excuse the National Unity Platform from the picture and say, welcome, George Mosisi. Let me begin by asking the question about not question as such, but seeking a preamble on how funds and the budget of Parliament looks like, how it's run, how it's conceived, and who is responsible for the monies that go to Parliament. This question should be going to Mr. Mukunda. CSBAG does a lot of monitoring and oversight in terms of budget allocation. How much money in this financial year do we have for Parliament, and who decides what goes where and when?
Parliament, good morning viewers. Parliament is among the 4 arms of government, and it gets its money from the consolidated fund. In the next financial year, 2024-2025, their budget has increased to 944 billion Ugandan shillings, from which they have in current now around 844. But you see, when you look at 2 years, it does not tell you exactly what it is. But if you look at, for example, for the last 8 years, 2015-16, the budget of Parliament was 371. Now it has increased by almost 265%. Over just on the 8-year period.
Within 8 years.
Within 8 years. So from 371 to 944. And our projection actually is that in the next coming years they will hit the 1 trillion mark, just as one institution of Parliament. So what does Parliament do? It has 3 functions: oversight, legislation, and appropriation. And I think now we are on appropriation, on how they allocate the money themselves.
That's right.
The Parliament has, like I said, that's 944, but where does it go? It supports the Speaker, it will support the Deputy Speaker, it will support the legislative work, it will support travel abroad, travel inland, allowances, and all those kind of things. Now, Parliament has the power to Sarah will help us in terms of the way it manages its funds. It's independent.
It's independent, yeah.
So you are the judge, you are the jury, you are the prosecutor, you are the police, you are the investigator, and everything else. That's what it is. And we have been saying that that is too much power. that can lead to abuse, which is happening now.
That's right.
You decide on how much you should get from the consolidated fund, and nobody questions that. But then you also decide on how you're going to spend it. And the biggest that challenge that we are facing is that the scrutiny for Parliament is extremely very limited. That even the Auditor General, to go to Parliament to audit their books, they must report to Parliament on the report that they are going to issue.
That is right.
So just imagine that I have used the analogy of telling the monkeys to decide on the fate of the forest. So you can imagine the discussion that is happening. Yeah. That even if you do a special audit for Parliament, it is still Parliament that is going to sit on that special audit to discuss what should be done after the special audit. So the way things are done right now, one is that we have learned that getting money from a consolidated fund to a personal account is against public finance management regulations and guidelines. That is wrong. That's right. That's number one. Number two is that there are things that are glaring. For example, that you cannot travel for 30 days and you travel 3 times in a month. I mean, even if you are, I don't know how that can be calculated. Already that is fraud. In front that is there. But the fundamental part for me, leaving out the politicians, is the role of the accounting officer. And we are not focusing on that. That the accounting officer is the gate person of ensuring that there is prudent public finance management in that particular institution. But now we are beginning to see that politicians are either exerting so much power to allocate the money to themselves, or there is a high degree of incompetence in managing public resources. Not only at Parliament, but if you can hear the outcry of chief administrative officers in districts, where the chairman says, I want you to appoint my brother as the head of the health department, even that when that brother has no qualification in any health degree, maybe he's a fine artist, but you want him to head the health department. And you have found the cows being transferred left and right simply because of that kind of pressure. So we need, I think, to focus on who is the gate person of our public finance management and what kind of qualifications should they have, how should we protect their offices, and what level of scrutiny should we put on them. Because for you to say, my boss, who is a politician, has directed that I spend money in a wrong way, and you go ahead and agree, at the end of the day, it is you who is responsible for mismanaging those public finance resources. And
then, of course, that politician also would use the fact that you agree to it and it's upon you.
The politician has not even signed anywhere. He has given directive, please go to Nairobi, go to Dar es Salaam, go to Cape Town, everybody, because she or he approves who should travel. But you as the accounting officer, it is your authority to tell your supervisor and say, look, Julius is traveling to South Africa 4 times in 1 week. Therefore, it's wrong. Or he is traveling without even submitting the previous accountability. So we can't allow that one. But if you keep quiet, you are breaching public finance management.
What is the radar reading like for the Center for Constitutional Governance in light of what's happening?
Well, the biggest problem with the Parliament is a situation created by the Constituent Assembly in their effort to make Parliament independent from all institutions and giving it autonomy to budget and spend as they wish. Under Article 85 of the Constitution, Parliament is self-budgeting. And it has an oversight role over everybody. When you go to Article 155 of the Constitution, Clause 2 provides that all self-budgeting institutions shall present their budgets to the President. Under Clause 3, who is the Minister of Finance? So either President or the Minister of Finance. But under Clause 3, then the Constitution says the President can only recommend, he cannot alter any of the budgeted items, he can only recommend to Parliament to review some of the allocations. So you have Parliament fully spending taxpayers' money as they wish. Then, like Julius has said, in a current situation, apart from independence, it's important to note that the judiciary is also independent under Article 128. But the judiciary doesn't have itself, you know, a holiday and limited access to taxpayers' money. They have just got increment of their salaries and retirement packages from Parliament. So for me, this was a mistake of the framers of the Constitution to think that the independence of an institution means having unlimited access to taxpayers' money. That was a mistake of the framers of the Constitution. So when you look at the current situation, because we've had parliaments before, we are in the 28th year of the 1995 Constitution. So why a crisis now? Something must have collapsed in terms of leadership. That means the leadership of Parliament, as in the Speaker, Deputy Speaker, leader of opposition, and the leader of government business. There is because these are the leaders of Parliament. So there is a failure on that aspect. The other biggest failure is the clerk of Parliament, who is the accounting officer. And these days, you have anybody with no financial basic information becoming accounting officers of taxpayers' money. Previously, there was a condition of having an MBA for somebody to become a permanent secretary or an accounting officer of any institution. MBA is quite this has, just have basics so that you can manage a government institution with a business mind to make it functional. But this time you have now, for example, the former Deputy Attorney General, Honorable Badolf Mwesige, from the extent of legal to now handling money. Does he understand what he's doing? Based on what we are seeing. So I think for me, those are the fault lines in Parliament. But when it comes to, you know, issues of posting funds on personal accounts, the clerk of Parliament should now be working to Rosara. How do you send money? Whether it's for social corporate responsibility, whether it is for what function, how do you send money on their personal account of a staff of Parliament other than their salary and entitlements? This is open fraud.
George Musisi, Wandera Ogalo reasoned during the formulation of the acts and the legal aspects that allow Parliament to be able to allocate the kind of money it does allocate itself, that it would be prudent that an institution that is supposed to look or conduct oversight roles over others must not again go to those institutions to seek funding. For example, he reasoned that if the Ministry of Finance has an issue with Parliament and then Parliament wants money, the Minister of Finance would act unfairly. So it was prudent that Parliament is excluded, or rather given the authority to conduct business on its own. However, we've seen that we've now run into a bit of trouble with that.
Yes, I want to agree. Actually, I want to differ a little with Dr. Sarah regarding, let me try to be the devil's advocate of the people who the framers. Actually, incidentally, it's from the 1995 Constitution, it was never like that. The senior lawyer, Honorable Wandera Ogalo, is one who even moved to have that independence by creation of the Administration of Parliament Act.
That's right.
They imagined that if we give this institution independence in financing, because initially it was like a department, just like judiciary has been until they passed the Administration of Judiciary Act recently, without having a direct charge on the consolidated fund. And Honorable Wandera Ogalo moved to have that act, creating the Parliamentary Commission, thinking that if Parliament is given independence in financing, in receiving its financing, it will strengthen its all the functions that Julius talked about.
Independence role.
The independence role. And of course it was in good faith, and rightly so. When they created the commission, look at the composition of the commission. Everyone is there deliberately. leader of government business to represent government.
Yeah.
Minister of Finance, not any other minister. Such that when we're talking about finances, the minister can advise that, by the way, you are budgeting this, but this is not there.
You're getting a
leader of opposition. So everyone was there deliberately. And the question that Sarah asked, therein lies the devil. That why now? Because we cannot look at Parliament in isolation of all other institutions that are happening. We should acknowledge that we have an institutional decay in this country. Remember a few years ago when there was a probe in the Bank of Uganda, which is also independent. When a torch was shown there, we remember what happened in Bank of Uganda probe by Honorable Katonto and Kosase. So Parliament, the biggest challenge now is that, one, what we should be grappling with, who exercises oversight over Parliament. Because increasingly we have seen a failure in leadership, and of course the politics has also taken over Parliament. It started rearing its ugly head in the 10th Parliament, to be fair. And even earlier. Remember, there's a gentleman called Wilson Mwesigi. He went to court and all up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court agreed. He sued the Parliamentary Commission for those increasing emoluments over time. And said that, no, before you increase, you ensure that the executive has had the say. That's why you have to move procedurally and bring a bill, not the increases of more of dishing out for yourself. However, when the politics takes over, when MPs want something from the president, they will ensure that they hold out something. When the president wants something from them, he will pass whatever moments they come. So when they want vehicles, I remember at some point the president was against the vehicles, but because he wants them over something, he will agree to the 200 million. And then so it's the politics has taken over. And even Julius talked about the role of the accounting officer. For starters, what happened to the career civil servants who used to occupy those places? We know how Honorable Adolf got that job. He wrote a letter asking the president that I have lost, I want to be, there's a vacancy in the Human Rights Commission. We all saw that letter. There's a vacancy in Human Rights Commission. Then a person who wants to be commissioned in Human Rights Commission was gifted with clerk to Parliament. So can such politicians, because we've seen them over time, exercise, because you know Honorable Samuel usually says that politicians are indisciplined. They are used to those gymnastics. And can an accounting officer now exercise control over an overbearing leadership? Because we saw that, remember the last Parliament when they exercised a charge on the supplementary budget in the COVID, and they got themselves 20 million. And it had to go all the way up to court, and then they were ordered to refund. So it has happened that the politics has taken over, and the bad practices, the bad financial practices cannot be checked because of that ugly politics, which has bedeviled in almost all institutions. And then Julius mentioned that some of the institutions that are there to check Parliament, Auditor General reports to Parliament. Parliament has a discretion, the Speaker has a discretion to decide which reports to debate. We saw on the Uganda Airlines, even without quoting any law, said this one will not be debated. So that means... But
that was illegal. She doesn't have that discretion.
So IGG is an office of Parliament. At one time we saw a standoff between an IGG, Justice Muriagonja, with the Speaker Kadaga, when the IGG made a decision which the Speaker didn't favor, and the Speaker had to remind her that you are an office of Parliament. You cannot... So, as we speak now, there is no single authority which can effectively exercise oversight over Parliament. And that's something that we should grapple with.
In other words, Parliament has effectively become a pawn on this board game.
It has become an absolute in itself when they choose to which money to increase, and the executive, of course, complies, because it's a game of scratch your back, I scratch mine. When they want an increment, they will tell these officers, and that's what happens in appropriation.
All right, let's not sit here and pretend we are not seeing things like Ugandans say. There is a crisis of leadership. Are we saying the current Speaker, the Right Honourable Anita Among, is grossly, and I must be very specific, is grossly inept at handling matters of leadership? Kadaga, at her time, we also saw a leakage of an email that was detailing her per diem across the various travels across the world, and it was about 616 million Uganda shillings in a space of 6 months. In this particular leakage, we are seeing figures that leave you completely dumbfounded. It's in billions, including release in a single disbursement of 500 million to a driver. If you don't mind, Julius Mukunda, as we speak right now, what are the entitlements away from salary? Because we've always known about the salary issue. We cannot debate that one because that's their job. But outside of salary, how much money are members of parliament making, or are they taking advantage of? If I have to make a trip, for example, and this one also includes Nupus Honcho, the leader of opposition, he went to Nairobi to visit Honorable Segirinya for 6 days, and that was 16 million Uganda shillings. Yet I understand that he was also in Nairobi on other work, so he was paid, I think, twice to visit a colleague and also do other business, which is quite queer.
No, it's not queer. It's wrong. You see, you can't be in two places at the same time unless you divide yourself into two. It's wrong and it's fraud, by the way. And we expect anybody who's going to go to Parliament to come up with those kind of statements that this is a fraud that has taken place. But let us understand this. I think a member of Parliament is paid a salary. A salary, you salary at the end of the month. Now we have been looking at some numbers in Parliament, and we have realized that salaries for members of Parliament, the statutory salaries, have actually remained the same for the last 8 years, around 74 billion for members of Parliament, for all of them. But we have also seen that welfare has tripled from around 100 billion to around 270 billion. We have seen allowances taking half of the entire budget of Parliament, and also the allowance have also increased from around 100 to around 500 billion Ugandan shillings. So what does that tell us? It tells you that that was the time when Parliament decided that they are not going to pay taxes on their allowances. So you rather leave the salaries intact, don't increase them, but go for allowances and welfare. Because that's where you're not likely to touch the taxes. And that is fundamentally wrong, because me and you, every little coin we get, the tax man is on the door waiting for us to cut it, whether it is your allowances, whether it is your salary, whether whatever you get, any income that you generate. But they excuse themselves from that, and they went and I think they went to the law and said parliamentary allowances are not going to be taxed. The other challenge is, and I don't know, if you're a member of Parliament, your job is to go and conduct committee meetings and attend Parliament. We will pay you for that on top of your salary. If you go to a committee, you are paid an allowance.
A sitting allowance.
If you go and attend Parliament, you are given an allowance. If you travel to your constituency, there is a mileage that is calculated for you. And that's why you find somebody from Chisoro would have more money for parliamentary allowance than my friend Honorable Sereko, who is around Kampala. So you total all that, and I think the last time we totaled, we found out that a member of Parliament was getting an average of 35 million per month. So what does that tell us? It tells us that you have this institution having a huge budget. Next year it's going to be 944 billion, and their major job is to legislate, to carry out oversight, but also to appropriate resources. Is that amount the right amount of money to invest in that institution? For example, do we have medicines in our hospitals? Do we have nice roads? I mean, potholes are now it's no longer a surprise. It's now a tourist attraction. That's what we are doing. Our children, this month alone, when you saw parents struggling to take their children to school because of exorbitant school fees, and Parliament has failed to regulate that, And we've been having a discussion why. Simply because the same people who are supposed to regulate are the same people running these particular schools. So you can't be a proprietor and at the same time you want to regulate the
policy maker.
And you want to regulate the same industry. It is impossible. It just can't happen.
Okay. So
you want really to a parliament to say what can we do to check the excessive power of parliament. And when she talked about, there's something she talked about around the framers of the constitution. They had a good face to say we need an independent parliament, but they forgot that this thing might turn into a monster. And how do you control it?
Maybe the framers of the constitution thought that Ugandans were getting better in terms of their moral standing, and within 20 or 25 years we would have people who think more patriotically than those that came before the 1995 constitution. But on matters of governance, Sarah Birete, when you look at the Speaker's office, the Deputy Speaker, the leader of government business and the leader of opposition, the amount of money they get, I'm not in position to even begin to question because I don't understand the nature of their work. But as a constitutional governance expert, when somebody learns that the Speaker of Parliament is given 8.2 billion Uganda shillings annually, the Deputy Speaker 7.4 billion, and then I understand that the leader of opposition suffered a drop in funding from around 4 billion to a paltry, in Ugandan terms, 800 million shillings, and that has caused a bit of furor there. Is it justifiable, even before we look at how it is allocated, when you say this year we are giving the Speaker 8.2 billion Uganda shillings to do her work?
Yeah, you know, the way Parliament has determined their facilitation. And I just want to, you know, add one thing from what I said prior, is that the Parliamentary Commission is also created under Article 78A of the Constitution, the one that George was talking about. So it's part of building into Article 85 emoluments of Parliament. They are determined by the MPs and that kind of thing that makes Parliament a sort of budgeting institution. But when you look at the exorbitant allowances that this 11th Parliament has created, an increment of about 300 billion from the previous Parliament, when our country, our public debt levels are hitting the 100 trillion mark almost, when you tabulate every quarter the same Parliament passes loans, passes supplementary budgets, and now they are weaker on oversight of the executive, and maybe it's connivance by the whole government. Maybe we can only exonerate the judiciary. It seems like it's connivance by the executive and the Parliament to rob the taxpayer. Because if you look at the manner in which the supplementary budgets they passed in December, huge amounts of classified expenditures. No wonder it's even rumored that some of this money returned to Parliament in terms of a Christmas gift and other monies for rationalization of agencies. All these are, there is a connivance between the Parliament and the Minister of Finance in abuse of taxpayers' money.
That's not connivance. You are talking about a syndicate.
Yes.
Connivance can be involuntary. You might find yourself into the mix of a connivance without necessarily knowing, and then realizing later that, oh, she was talking about this. What she actually meant is this. A syndicate. Are you making that very clear?
Yes, of course. Right, but as you see the composition of the commission, a Minister of Finance is a member of the commission. You need to invite Honorable Matia Kazaija here. The Prime Minister is a member of the commission. Invite them here. Did they pass these decisions? Did they pass the bonanzas that we are seeing in terms of expenditures of Parliament? And why? If it's not in exchange for something, and this is the syndicate I'm talking about. so that Parliament closes, gives a blind eye to excesses of executive, and the executive in turn has given a blind eye to the excesses of Parliament. And this is the dilemma that we are caught in.
George Musisi.
Yeah, I agree. The point Sarah is making is what I think I said. The politics has taken over. You earlier said that maybe the framers envisaged morally upright Ugandans. No, they envisaged office holders doing their duty.
Okay.
Upholding the law. Yeah. What is happening now?
Morality was never a question.
Yeah, you hinted about it. You said that you can go into interrogating. Why is the budget, this budget, rising when Julius is in office? When Sarah comes in, it's dropped. These privileges are cut. That's where the politics comes in. Julius was talking about trips. You know what is happening? And it didn't even start with this parliament. It started even with Honorable Kadaga, the 10th parliament. If I'm in the bad books of the speaker, I will not go for any trips. If
but
I'm in the
you
good
go
books,
to Parliament to travel? Is this what the
if you have to
right
travel
now the reason why trips are
everybody in the
crucial,
Parliament is about travel.
the reason why trips and they have become a tool of control. The reason why trips are crucial is because of the income associated, not even for whatever they are going for.
Going to do.
That is why the speaker, the traveling list is now directly controlled by the speaker. You have to approve Chris. If Chris is in good books, you find that some particular people have traveled 10 times. I remember one time the Honorable Yusuf Sivand was telling me that, but you know, this person is even being sent to a law society event in East Africa who is not even, he doesn't even have a certificate in law. So, it has become that if I'm in the good books, that's why you find some people being in France and Nairobi at the same time. So it's a controlling, it's the politics which has taken over, that it's a scratch my back. So when the Minister of Finance comes in, because they are pushing this supplementary budget, they will have to, Parliament says, okay, you are bringing this, put in this for us. It's now a bargaining chip, and that's the point I was talking about. You remember what happened, the Roko money, when it came to the Parliament at around 7 p.m., put on order paper, passed. I remember the leader of opposition and Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi fuming. I don't know how far it went.
That Roko, if I may, is for information. The original request of Roko was 90 billion.
And what was the final approval?
About 200 and something billion. So it kept multiplying beyond the needs of Roko.
Across the chain. Across the chain.
Allow me to stay with you, Judge Musisi, on this. Within the current melee of whatever is happening, how does the speaker get to be halted in her tracks? Because what we are seeing now is a trajectory of expenditure that is way out of, control. How do we get, does the commission have anybody on it that can, for example, put their foot down and say, no, this is what we're supposed to do?
That power can only come from outside Parliament, not from inside. You know, that huge budget has enabled the leadership to have a strong hold over almost
if
that.
You question,
yes,
then
the other
you're
day,
choking yourself, just last literally.
Week, the leader of opposition told the media, it's not a secret, that he has not attended has not attended any commission meeting. The commission last sat in August formally, and when he wrote the speaker asking that let's discuss this, the speaker said we shall sit in July. That's the commission which is supposed. Yeah. So, and what happens if the commission doesn't sit? Because as the leader of opposition, who is supposed to be the alternative voice, you can only speak on the floor. Discretion to speak is for the leadership.
Why haven't you sued?
Well, me as an individual, or you got the question is,
you're a lawyer.
Yes.
You understand the illegalities that are going on.
Yes.
You've previously gone to petition. There's a case petition.
But there's also
many others. Then the other
abuse
perhaps
of
you should be
yes. The other challenge. The other challenge, Chris, and that the other challenge that you face is that many Ugandans seem to have placed that burden on particular people. Let me give you an example. When this exhibition in Parliament started about 3 weeks ago, there is a young man, my client, he's called Suna James. He's supposed to come. He mobilized on his Twitter that, friends, all those who are aggrieved, let's march to Parliament in protest peacefully. He turned up alone, holding his placard. He was arrested. He's now in Luzira. He's coming back today for bail. So the question is, whose duty is it? And that's why I'm saying that it should come from Parliament. It shouldn't be a duty of Sir and Julius. But where is the anger of Ugandans? One time an NRM MP, whose I won't disclose because it was a private conversation, was telling me when they're dishing out the 500 million vehicles to former speakers, then get another one as deputy speaker and what, told me that maybe we are provoking Ugandans into anger and they don't seem to see it. So that duty to hold everyone to account can only come from outside, either the executive, which now we have seen is complicit, either the judiciary through litigation, or the judiciary has already spoken at some point, or Ugandans, civic action.
All right, talking about civic action, we are going to be asking Julius Mukunda and Sarah Birete, when we return from the break, why the likes of Spire are beating you on civic action when it comes to protesting some of these gross anomalies when it comes to financial management in Parliament. Do stay with us. We'll be right back. You're watching Morning at NTV. This is the Kickstarter. Welcome back. We're glad you're still with us here on the Kickstarter segment of the Morning at NTV. My guests in studio helping us understand the gross mismanagement of public funds within Parliament, and maybe also understanding that sometimes money will fly around in order for people to do their jobs, but whether they should actually be using that amount of money to do those jobs is what matters. Julius Mukunda is the Executive Director at the CSBAG. We're also joined by Sarah Birete, the Executive Director at the Center for Constitutional Governance, as well as George Mosisi, the lawyer. Before we went for the break, I'd put the challenge to Sarah Birete and Julius Mukunda. In the past, the levels of activism had seen you be very proactive, especially when matters of gross mismanagement of public funds have come up. Why have you allowed, no, that's the wrong question. I should not ask you why you have allowed. Spire Sentongo has beaten you to protesting or leading this particular campaign in order to unearth this gross mismanagement of funds. Are you sleeping on the job?
I think for me it's not a question of who is a winner or not. And we are not in this to say who is better than the other.
At protesting? At
protesting. I think we are in this to show Ugandans the importance of prudent public finance management. And we call upon every Ugandan, spare it at the national level, but you also have foot soldiers in villages who have been able to say our medicine has been stolen and that money has recovered. We have stories in Fort Portal whereby one of our members followed up to ensure that the stolen drugs worth 920 was returned to the health center. So we have that. And I'm glad that people like Spire and others are also contributing to the bigger cause. This is not a small thing. And it's not about anybody's specialty. And that's why, for me, every time I call Ugandans, please, that health center you see, it's not for any politician. It is for you. When it is not functioning, it is you who is going to be affected. So it's about all of us coming together and bring our own different energies and capacities to be able to ensure that politicians are accountable. And that takes me to the question of really what's wrong at this particular moment. And I think for me, we need to look at the leadership. So when the leadership fails to deliver, when the leadership fails to get a vision, when the leadership is manipulated, we begin to see all these cracks. And as long as the leadership does not ensure that the systems in the government, because me as a Ugandan,
let's be specific on leadership. Please say president or the prime minister, so that we understand this whole leadership.
Or maybe it's a collective.
Yeah, because I'm also a leader.
No, you see, for me, real leadership, at this particular moment, the president is the only person who can help us to put this type of abuse in the parliament. Because, like, all the laws says parliament is self-accounting, is self-regulatory, is self-budgeting, but they report to the president. So the president really, at this particular moment, is the one to rein on the excessive power of Parliament. And we had earlier advised the President and said, this role might also be very difficult, considering the political pressures that are likely to come. You need to put an independent salary commission to be able to decide on the emoluments of Parliament. And if you don't do that, then you are caught when the politics become very sensitive. And he will tell you, 10 years ago, the cost of running an office of any government was very low, maybe $1 million or $2 million. These days, it will be in billions. And remember, all this money is going to come from the consolidated fund.
That's right.
So I think the present trade needs to come out, and we work on regulating these independent institutions.
Sarah, the President has often spoken and appeared to want to fight corruption on many of the national events. He comes up with a new phrase, a new slogan, a moniker on how he's going to ensure that the corrupt are, of course, reined in. Does he have the capacity to do that?
I want to briefly comment about activism.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, Article 17 of the Constitution on the duties of a citizen enjoins every citizen to fight corruption, protect the property of government, and so many other duties. So it's a duty of every citizen to be an activist. When it comes to civil society work, the current civil society organizations in Uganda are doing 30% of the work that is there to be done. There is 70% undone work. So there is space for everyone. And activism is not a competition. Yeah. So I thought I should add my voice on that.
I specifically came for you guys on that because you occupy good offices that allow you to be more effective in leading such campaigns than the average guy in the village.
Let me tell you, we have an anti-corruption coalition of Uganda with branches in every country. Just this year, the Rwenzori Anti-Corruption Coalition won the Miriam Matembe model for being the best in fighting corruption in the Rwenzori region. So we have so many people doing different work, using different methods on corruption. Spire and team are using online activism to fight corruption. And it is, for you might think they are the only ones working, but there are so many people even in the countryside, the Western Civil Society Forum, there are so many people focusing on fighting corruption as an objective. For us, we have broader objectives of governance, not just corruption. But everybody's contribution is needed, and so much more. So it's not a competition. Having said that, the President, under Article 99 of the Constitution in exercise of executive authority, he is accountable to Ugandans on all expenditures of taxpayers' money. I saw recently a clip of the Right Honorable Speaker of Parliament saying she has the support of the President. And I kept wondering, support to do what? Of course, she has the support of the President. She was endorsed by SEC. But in this particular question of misuse of taxpayers' money, what is that the support she's talking about? That she has support to misuse taxpayers' money? And the silence of the President, of course, is very loud in this saga. The President, if you look at the previous scandals, of course, the recent one being the iron sheets, the Mabati scandal, he issued a very strong circular that excited the citizens that maybe this time he's going to do something. But he still sits in cabinet with those 23 ministers that were implicated in the iron sheet saga. Only 2 or 3 were taken to court. The other 20, he has maybe protected. I don't know what has happened. There is even no statement on the inquiries. When you issue a circular that you are going to investigate and act, why don't you then give feedback to the people? What were the investigations? Have you acted? He's still seen with the same group. So then is that the person that now you can count on to say that this time on Parliament he can do something? Let him first tell us. He alerted us that this time is putting the whip. Did he put it on Karamoja iron sheets or not? And if he didn't, then will he put it on Parliament?
What constitutional safeguards can we now hold on to be able to rein in on the Parliament's unguarded expenditure?
Do you have any?
Well, because of the bad manners, that was your word, because of the bad practices and the politics that has bedeviled almost every institution, our constitution has been very weakened. And before I go to that, I don't want to rain on Julius's parade, but I don't have a lot of confidence in thinking that the president will control this. Why? One, first of all, the president, before we go to know of this, I'm sure the president has the biggest consumer of intelligence, receives this. If, Chris, you received 100 million on your account, government would know. They would even stop you from accessing it unless you made a lot of explanation. So if someone...
There are even limits on cash withdrawals by bank. So how are these people withdrawing billions in cash?
You make 6 withdrawals in a day, you get 2 other billion in your account, and the state FIA is not watching. It's watching. So the president is aware.
In other words, there is selective attention to the amounts of money that go flying about.
Exactly. And the speaker saying that I have the president's confidence, it's deliberate. She's wading off because we've seen how initially we thought that maybe it would be denial. At first they say, no, those are forgeries. No, we don't consider social media rumors. Then homosexuals. Then old women from Busoga. Then they have the president's confidence. So the question is, the president is aware. And then two, this profligacy is not only with Parliament. That Parliament has also seen elsewhere that there's a lot of extravagance. So when it gets a chance to be extravagant as well, it will get its opportunity, because Parliament says, we are giving you this money. We are seeing motorcades all over. So I don't think, but the biggest challenge, the constitutional challenge that it's bringing, that it's weakening Parliament's oversight role. Just imagine people appearing before Park or Kosasi. I saw my good friend Mwanga Chivumbi the other day threatening people with arrest. How do you have the moral authority to start threatening people with arrest when you have all this going all over your house as Parliament?
Ladies and gentlemen, many thanks for your perspectives on this. This discussion cannot be exhausted on Morning at NTV, neither can it be done in a single day. However, the momentum and the fact that we are able to amplify these particular messages is pretty much important. George Musisi, many thanks. Sarabirete, many thanks too. And of course, many thanks to you too, Julius Mukunda, for making time. Now, let me go on ground and talk to Stephen Mbide, who is in Chambogo for what's being described as the Social Works Day. He will be, of course, be giving us an update on exactly how that is going on and what it means for the community, not only in Chambogo, but indeed across the country. Good morning, Stephen Mbide.